Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for April 15th through 21st. This week I read 2 books, I watched 2 shows, and I listened to 1 book. First this week I read Heart of Iron by Ashley Poston. All I knew about this one going into it is I really liked her release from last year, Geekerella, and that this one is set in space, which I assume she was a fan of based on reading Geekerella. What's interesting is someone asked me how this book was going when I was about 2 chapters in, and at that point we had had a chapter from Anna, a low-class character, and Rob, a high-class character, and I kind of figured that maybe this dual narrative was kind of Ashley's thing, given that directly parallels the characters in Geekerella. After that point, however, it jumped right out of most of the trope pits that I thought it would fall into. That boy and girl do not fall in love. They love others. There's at least a couple of queer couples. There's a little back and forth in the is she or isn't she the chosen one department, but considering the romance wasn't straightforward, this didn't bother me so much. This book has a multitude of perspectives, and jumping in between all of these characters' heads really intensified my feelings. As for the ending, which I will not spoil, I appreciate that it didn't cut off mid-action. I still want to know what happens next, I still want to read the next book when it comes out, but we aren't left in a battlefield wondering about the status of each character. We know what they are processing and we know the next steps they want to take. They just need time to rest up before the next adventure. Thank you for not leaving me hanging in the emotional energy department, Ashley. I really appreciate it. Next, I devoured All Out, the no longer secret lives of queer teens throughout the ages. This is an anthology of queer short stories edited by Chandra Mitchell, featuring stories by authors such as Mackenzie Lee, Sean David Hutchinson, Melinda Lowe, and many more. This collection includes stories from various time periods as well as various different queer protagonists, covering many sections of the spectrum. However, most of the stories were set in America or Europe, so that aspect could have been a little bit more diverse. In terms of ethnic diversity, about 1/3 of the stories had protagonists of color. It was great to see some ace rep in a queer anthology, as well as some trans main characters, and a potential non-binary protagonist. Unfortunately, that story was a little bit confusing, so it was hard to tell if that was the intent of that character. I enjoyed most of these stories, was happy to see that not all of them were romances, and I'm excited to pick up more by each of these authors. This week in Survivor, I decided that my favorite narrative is Michael's, which is why I root for him. The castaways think he's a 23-year-old real estate agent, but in reality, he is 18 years old. And it would be really cool for him to make it to the end and announce his youth, which would make him the youngest winner ever. This week my best friend told me that she watched the first episode of Scandal and felt that she was hooked, and it reminded me that I should get back into it. I had watched all that was available at the time a couple of years ago and then went on to something else. Netflix indicated I was about 7 episodes into the 6th season, but I decided to start the 6th season over again because so much happens in this show that I am happy for a recap. The show is such a gut punch with constant misdirection and moral issues. The acting is superb, the social commentary is fabulous. I am glad to be back in the Oval. This week I listened to Adnan's Story by Rabia Chaudhry. For those of you familiar with the first and best season of Serial, this case will sound familiar. Adnan Syed was a senior in high school when his ex-girlfriend Heyman Lee was murdered, and he was tried and convicted of her killing back in 2000. Rabia Chaudhry is a friend of the family who was attending law school at the time of the trial, and has been working with Adnan ever since to overturn his conviction. This book goes through all the evidence, all the events that had to fall into place to get Adnan convicted, and the years of fighting the legal system that predated Serial, as well as how that project brought his case to the public, sometimes in ways that upset the author of this book. She had her own podcast in reaction to Serial, working with other professionals, and in the editor's note of this book they indicate that they're waiting on the decision as to whether or not a new trial will be granted. This book was published in 2016, and that decision just came out last month, indicating that he will get a new trial due to ineffective counsel at the time of his conviction. I listened to Serial shortly after it ended because this was the time frame in my life where I discovered podcasts, and I had recently run out of episodes of Welcome to Night Vale. And although Serial has a lot of information about the case, this book has much more. This makes sense, of course, because it is a longer work put together by somebody who's been on the case for many years, whereas Serial was researched over a matter of months. Serial is one small piece of this puzzle that has been in play for almost 20 years. If you are interested in true crime, I highly recommend this book whether or not you're familiar with the case. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you next time. Bye!